I'm Christy.
And I'm Kathy.
And this is The Psychic
And the Skeptic. Welcome back to The Psychic and the Skeptic. And on this episode, we are opening our cryptid files.
Woohoo.
And this cryptid is the Thunderbird. Now, we've already covered skinwalkers. So this is our second cryptid file. So this goes into some stuff that's a little bit out there for me. These are like animals or creatures or some kind of non-human-like entity from that metaphysical world.
I have heard about the Thunderbird for many years now, and I am intrigued by all the cryptids, I'm not going to lie, but I don't necessarily know that there's enough evidence on all of them to say that they're true. Bigfoot? Yeah, I'm a believer in Bigfoot, and that will be coming up.
That's going to be a big episode. We're probably going to do 2, maybe even 3 parts to that one if you want to split it to the Yeti and all the things.
And there's so much stuff that's been documented about Bigfoots. And
that could be its own podcast.
No joke.
And I'm sure there's probably one out there.
Probably. Yeah, for sure.
But cryptids are fun in the sense that if you're taking the skeptic viewpoint, this is very entertaining and very like fantasy world kind of stuff, or legend and lore and culture too. How these cryptids are different across cultures. And the Yeti and the Bigfoot, that's one example. And even the term is different, but still essentially the same creature.
You know about the Thunderbird, you're talking about these cultural roots. It's actually rooted from the Native Americans.
Right. And so the Thunderbird primarily stems from American culture, folklore. And this sacred being evolved across newspapers, frontier lore, modern cryptozoology.
Mm-hmm.
So cryptozoology is another term, the study of these creatures. And it's evolved over time into this giant, possibly prehistoric bird. Although I think some of these stories might vary on what it looks like. So you're imagining like a big, giant pterodactyl in these stories.
Yes.
And we're going to post some pictures out there because we have some things to say, and we'll get to that in our stories.
Yeah, a picture or two for each of the cases we're going to talk about.
But this prehistoric-like bird is said to roam American skies. And for each case, we're going to compare that metaphysical interpretation and that scientific explanation that you all know and love from The Psychic and the Skeptic.
And I will say that most of the alleged sightings have been in the United States and Canada. But when we look at what it looks like, a description is generally that this Thunderbird is 15 to 20 feet, with some people saying that it's gone up to 30 feet, and that's for its wingspan.
So for our international listeners, 15 to 20 feet is about 4.5 to 6 meters.
There you go. I don't speak meters, but I'm glad that's in there. And then its height, roughly 4 to 8 feet tall. You got that in meters?
1.2 to about 2.4 meters.
Perfect. All right. So it's often described as having a large eagle-like or vulture-like appearance, sometimes having a 6-inch hooked bill. So this bird is considered sacred to the Native American people. When we're looking at the Native American tribes, we have about 6 different ones that the Thunderbird is referenced to. Now, if I don't butcher some of these names, and I might, but you have the Algonquin, then you have the Lakota, you have the Anishinaabe, and then you have the Ho-Chunk, and then the Pacific Northwest Coastal Nations. That includes the Tlingit. And then this last one is going to be Kwakiwak. Yeah, that's a hard one. But yes, that would be the main tribes that this Thunderbird is supposed to be associated with. Now, when they look at it culturally, what it represents to them is like a sky guardian, or like its name, the Thunderbird. So the bringer of the storms. It's known to be for thunder. It's also supposed to be a defeater of great horned serpents and it also, they believe, brings some sort of cosmic balance. Now, how do they name it the thunder? This is interesting, a little tidbit. Supposedly, this bird is so powerful that when its wings flap, it sounds like thunder, or it creates thunder, depending upon which cultural view you believe in. And then, supposedly, lightning can flash from its eyes.
Oh, okay.
Kathy's, this is already bull crap.
Cool
I
for a
don't believe
book
it.
or a movie.
I can see you rolling your eyes.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, it supposedly lives above or in the clouds, and in Anishinaabe culture, the Thunderbird protects humanity from dangerous underworld beings. It does this now by battling underwater serpents to maintain the cosmic balance. So if you look at this overall with kind of the beliefs associated, would be something like sky versus the water,
Right.
order versus the chaos,
Mm-hmm.
and big bird
Getting its food for...
versus some other weird creature. I don't know.
Well, and how many times, if you ever live near water, have you seen birds dive in to grab their food? They go fishing, and so maybe they didn't really understand animal behavior and then just thought that's what they were doing. They were battling this
Underwater
danger
fish
under...
demon.
Yeah, and water's scary. You can't see underneath the surface. You don't know what lurks beneath, and so here comes this creature to save you and get that thing out. And
Yeah, until it gets its talons on you and it takes you up to be its dinner.
exactly.
Oh, what is that old song that comes through? Spirit in the Sky. So if it gets you, you're going to be a spirit in the sky. Anyway, also something else, though, when we're talking about the sky and the water, the order and the chaos, it's like back for some of the early cultures, they had to have a way to explain certain things in nature. And I'm wondering if maybe the Thunderbird legend didn't originally come out of something like this.
Just
So,
like the skinwalkers, exactly.
yeah, some way
To teach lore and to
explain
children
balance.
and help them to understand the world around them.
Yeah, and explain the world balance. Absolutely. Hey, look.
But my brain is thinking, because I'm going through the whole process of what could this really be and why these specific tribes? Because we live in Oklahoma and none of the tribes here are mentioned under this list, which makes me think, where do we have large birds? I mean,
Okay,
we do
I've got
have vultures here, but there's other birds in other places that have giant wingspans.
So I've got an answer for that. Okay. Most of the reports, or supposedly the sightings, are centered more in the Pacific Northwest, the Great Lakes, and the Midwest, but not as commonly reported in the Midwest.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like it's more maybe up northeast, like you were saying, the New England area,
Or
areas like that.
Northwest with the Pacific.
Yeah. And it's also known to be in places that are not really populated, more so isolated
Lots
type
of
people.
wildlife for food, that
Yes.
kind of thing. So this talk about culture from the scientific viewpoint is going to look towards anthropology to help figure all of this out. So this anthropologist Frank Boas in the late 1800s was trying to document this symbolism with this thunderbird. He noted that there's consistent storm imagery across geographically separate tribes. And thunderstorms obviously are terrifying and powerful in those times. They were very exposed in how they lived. And so pre-scientific cultures encoded weather phenomenon into symbolic beings.
Mhm.
So if they were to see big thundercloud, they're thinking this is the heavens or the gods or whatever their belief system is communicating to them, or it could be manifesting as a creature. Similar to pareidolia, in a sense, we look at the clouds and we can see shapes. So when the fear coming from storms collides with this imagery our brain is creating, it's easy to see how cultures could see this bird in the sky within the clouds coming to communicate doom or something is coming on them. And so the sky predator versus a water serpent myth parallels globally with storm myths like Zeus fighting the Typhon. And a lot of this was communicated through petroglyphs and effigy mounds, which are those dirt mounds that they built up shaped like animals and beings in attempt to communicate with what's in the sky above.
This again goes back to creation origins, like different cultures trying to explain different reasons for like why the sun is there, why it thunders, why it rains. Yeah,
Yep.
definitely can see that.
So these effigy mounds, and there's one specifically in Wisconsin, and I think there's some others in Iowa, they reflect cultural symbolism, not necessarily zoologic evidence that these exist. So again, even in Roman times, they had gods and all things to explain those phenomena that you were talking about. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's proof of it because it's documented and written on a stone wall or in the ground as with an effigy.
You're mentioning zoological evidence, and that makes me think, even with anthropology and archaeology, if these thunderbirds are really in existence, whether past or present, don't you think sort of remains would be found? You'd think there'd be some sort of trace of something, fossilized bones, or I don't know, feathers or whatever.
And as we get into these cases, you'll see that this is some of what they're trying to. There's no archive, there's no documentation of living. So it's not very specific in the explanation on each case. You would have seen that in archaeology. Archaeological digs would have proven that some of these creatures, so if you find a fossil, you can date it back to how long ago that creature exists. And we don't have any archaeological evidence of anything current to when these stories, like in the late 1800s, and when these stories came about. So with that anthropological viewpoint and archaeological viewpoint, it's very easy for science and the skeptic to explain these stories away. It doesn't take away the fun of the culture and the lore that and the storytelling that is so important to culture that continues. And likely, we're not here to tell you what to think, and we're not telling you that you should or shouldn't believe one way or the other on these things. It's more of this is a perspective in the conversation that we're having on this topic.
And we're going to have lots of people who some may side with, yes, it's real. Some, it's not real. Just like with Bigfoot. You got hardcore believers in it, and you got believers.
We're just presenting the viewpoint from the metaphysical and the scientific.
Correct. And we do have 5 rather famous cases that we can talk about. And for each of these, there is a photo. And I will, when this episode releases, I will release those photographs on our Facebook and Instagram page. So this first one, case 1, it's known as the Civil War pterosaur. And this is a sepia-toned image. And in the background, it's all jungle and wooded, but then you see there's these 6 Civil War soldiers. And I believe this would be soldiers of the North because of the blues, it looks like. But they're all standing beside this massive winged carcass. And it's laid across, either like on the ground, you can see it. And one guy's kind of standing in front. And honestly, it looks like a pterodactyl to me, like in dinosaur days.
Yeah, it's
what
got
it looks
the
like.
head of a pterodactyl and the wing shape. It's laid out with the wings stretched out.
Supposedly, these Union soldiers shot this bird during the Civil War time. Then they went ahead and they posed with the carcass.
And that's the photo that we're looking at.
Correct. And the photo is supposed to prove prehistoric creatures survived into modern times, which I guess 1865 is modern, not so much. But so, yeah. And this picture does circulate online.
Of course it does.
Yeah, like Civil War soldiers with the pterodactyl they shot. You could probably even Google search that or whatever.
Sure, and that's the only place you're going to find it because there's no military record that describes such an event, no Civil War archive containing such a photograph, and no 19th century documentation of living pterosaurs.
But I love this photo, though.
Yes, it's very fun.
It looks so old and it looks so
right, which you can do with your iPhone. You can turn your profile picture into sepia, and you can adjust it and edit it. Yeah, it's so hard these days. Technology is great, but we can create things and circulate this to, who knows why people do these kind of fake things, just to maybe get clicks and likes and create conversation and controversy. But this appears to be a modern digital fabrication of this particular photo, and it's probably created in the early 2000s, and it's styled to look aged and damaged, which you could do easily. So, but pterosaurs, including species like the pteranodon, they went extinct about 66 million years ago at the end of the Cretaceous period. And we know that from that carbon dating in those archaeological digs.
Mm-hmm. Interesting picture, though.
Yeah, it's
and
fun
could you
for
imagine?
Sure. So our next
Case 2, the Tombstone Thunderbird from 1890.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
This is later than Civil War, but the 1800s nonetheless.
And I did these cases chronologically. So this would be the next one. So supposedly the Civil War one was the earliest photographed one.
And that is a time when archaeological digs were starting to be a thing. We were discovering all kinds of fossil evidence from the Cretaceous period and before.
Yeah, they didn't even know what dinosaurs were as they stumbled upon a fossil, and they didn't really even know what it was.
So, yeah, so the hype was out there then. So I can see how conversation and anecdotal stories, perhaps they didn't understand how old this was. So they become aware. Newspapers maybe say this fossil was found in Iowa, and now somebody sees a giant bird in the sky that's normal and natural, and the fear behind what is this thing coincides with what they read about, what they saw, and the story gets expanded.
And we're speaking about the digital age of things. So we know that there's photographs, but I have seen some videos, not just on the internet, but also on TV, where it shows like this huge, massive, like bird flying in the background.
Right, yeah. So all the paranormal shows that do cryptids. Yes.
I've even seen a witch flying on a broomstick.
Right. Yes. The television is just like the internet, Christy.
Oh, I know.
And now we've got AI to contend with here, right?
Oh, I know. And AI is getting wild, man.
So it's going to be very hard for people to understand what's true and what's not.
In fact, I've been having fun with AI. Something recently with my psychic investigator comments at the end of our investigations on our website, the pages. So I've been putting in information of what I see psychically, giving a description. And ChatGPT, the AI, is coming up with these images of what I saw.
What you described?
Yeah.
So like a sketch artist for police and
psychic
detectives.
sketch. Yeah, a psychic
You
sketch
need a sketch artist.
And I'm going to be honest, like some of the stuff it's come up with, I've been really impressed with and be like, wow, that was so close to what I actually saw.
Some of these photos are coming from earlier times before AI, where you actually had to have some kind of digital artistry and know-how to create some of these images.
Sure. I just think it's cool, though, back to that, where people can actually see now something that I've seen psychically.
Yeah.
Bringing it to life.
Right.
But
So
anyway.
the Tombstone Thunderbird. So this is the 1890 photo. So tell me more about this one.
Yeah, it is one of the most famous stories that actually comes out of Arizona, reported in the Tombstone Epitaph in Arizona. So supposedly the way that they describe this bird is it's got a 20 to 30 foot wingspan. Its wings are really smooth. It's got a long reptilian type tail. And supposedly the alleged original photograph was never recovered. So if it was never recovered.
So the photo we have is a recreation of the photo?
I'm not sure.
Which was
it's not
fabrication.
Like they had it's not like they had a scanner back then. Let me just scan it in and upload it. So I'm not really sure.
I don't think this photo ever existed in 1890.
You know what, though? I'll be honest. The first time that I saw this photograph, I was like, interesting.
It seems a little clear.
Really not.
So where this recreation came from, if the alleged photograph was never recovered, how do we have a photograph that we can post on our Instagram? I don't know.
And this picture shows 10 men. There's actually 4 posed sitting down in front of the bird. And then you have the remainder of the men standing behind him. And they're holding out the wings. They've got the wings grabbed in their hands, holding it out. And you even got a little doggy there on the right side of the photo. So
there's 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some things in this photo seem to be clearer than other things. And we know a lot of these older 1800 photographs are going to have very blurred details and eyes when you're zoomed out like this particular photo. But the creature's wings look pretty clear. They don't look very blurred.
I agree with that statement.
It seems doctored. Obviously, it's just this isn't something that we have seen and have any documented evidence of. This is the peak of fascination with dinosaurs and prehistoric life at that time. So I can see how somebody wants to create evidence of that in modern time to document that fascination. Fossil discoveries, again, like we talked about, were part of the headlines. So I don't think I need to restate that because we already did that.
Yeah.
But there's no recovered, like you said, there's no recovered photo. There's no preserved body. Wouldn't they put that in a museum?
Oh, I would have thought.
And then there's no follow-up documentation. Where did this go from there? Who bought it? Et cetera, et cetera. So clearly, this looks like another hoax. It could be an exaggeration from another large bird sighting. And then somebody fabricated this photo to just, they want it to be true, so they create this photograph so that people can't doubt it.
That's all points taken.
Yeah.
I really agree on this one. Now, I'm not saying there was never any large prehistoric bird that was seen by indigenous people at some point. Cave indigenous people.
Look at birds now that we look at. They look like dinosaurs, right?
They got features, and supposedly dinosaurs came from birds.
Birds came from dinosaurs. That's
what I meant. It just came out backwards, but you knew what I meant.
Yes.
Most people thought they were reptilian, but they're finding that they're more related to the bird family.
And the newspapers, even if this was published in a newspaper, they sensationalized everything. Like this, they had to sell stories, just like our media today is trying to sell you a story.
Good story. Yeah.
Yep. So,
well, we got another case 3.
Yep.
Now, this is also from 1890. This is called the 1890 Farmer Thunderbird photo. Now, this one is said to date back to 1890 in the American West, commonly linked to Arizona Territory, Texas, or sometimes even Illinois. And in many versions of this legend, supposedly ranchers like the farmers or cowboys shot this gigantic flying creature. The wingspan was supposedly 20 to 40 feet wide. And then these men posed with the body as proof. Now, supposedly this image was allegedly published in a newspaper around 1890. And if you look at the photograph, it does look like it would be early photograph times, like when photography was just coming out. Things are not very clear. This is a black and white photo.
Yeah, this one looks more like an authentic photo in the sense that it's not very clear, but if it's a true photo, it looks like whatever they were standing in front of could be anything. It could be some kind of like canvas or some leather, some scraps of something that just happened to be laying in the shape of wings. So, but you can't tell anything off of this photo.
Yeah, the way that it's laying downward, like most of the bottom of the body is blacked out. Yeah, you can see the upper part that's light.
If you have a large hide of some sort from a cow and it was ripped to shreds and it's laying around, and somebody could see how the shape of this looks like a bird, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is a big giant bird.
The matrixing.
Exactly.
With photos. Yeah.
Well, like pareidolia effect. So it takes a shape similar to a bird, so your brain's going to tell you it's a bird that you're looking at.
And if this was really published in a newspaper, why isn't there more reports of that, copies of it, or something on the internet?
So like I said, there's no original newspaper archive that has been verified. And I did a search in the database that I use for newspapers, and there's articles in there that talk about the lore of the Thunderbird, but there's nothing about a sighting or a photo from a farm. I've checked Illinois, I've checked nationwide, and there's only really 2 mentions of the Thunderbird. But they're talking about the effigy mounds and that there was one shaped like a large bird. And this person in the 1890s was connecting that to weather phenomenon and other effigies that are very similar in response to the weather.
So I wonder if this photograph being linked to just the topic, but not the actual photograph itself, then it's got to be.
Yeah, and this photo could easily have been faked and made to look really old and blurry just to keep the story going.
Could have been. Let's move on to case 4. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
This one is the Pennsylvania giant bird of 1892. Supposedly in April of 1892, newspapers, including the Altoona Times, reported sightings across Clinton, Tioga, and Center counties. So, witnesses basically describe seeing a 20-foot wingspan on this bird, very dark plumage, or is that plumage?
Plumage.
Okay. Very dark plumage, an eagle-like head, and said it was very smooth and fast gliding. Now, this was also reported in multiple newspapers across Pennsylvania.
Not. I did that search too. What?
Anyway, supposedly, this is symbolically as well, these massive birds appear in industrializing landscapes. It could be like a collective anxiety, something going on where it's a mass
Yeah, so now
anxiety
everybody
sort of
feels
thing.
like they saw it too. So, yeah, I saw something.
So I don't know. On this one too, something, when you look at it, 1892, this photograph doesn't even look like it's that old. I have to call BS on that. It's this guy standing in front of this big black bird.
Yeah, this photograph looks like it came from mid-century, 20th century.
Look at his clothes.
This
He
is
don't even
not
look like 1892.
19th century, yeah.
So I'm not sure how they put this together, but
yes,
it doesn't look real.
This could be an artistic rendition. It could be in some kind of art museum, or maybe somebody took a pterodactyl and put feathers on it because of the theory that perhaps the pterodactyl did have feathers at one point. So we can't verify what this photo is. And I did search the newspapers for the Altoona Times in 1892 of that year, not just April. So the only article in the Altoona newspaper in 1892 that came anywhere close to being some kind of story about a giant bird was a sea captain who actually got thrown from a ship. He was traveling and signed on to work on this ship so that he could get this transport to Australia. And his coworker and him didn't get along.
Mm-hmm.
And one night there was some bad weather and he was stepping on a rope, and then the rope all of a sudden snaps and he gets tossed into the ocean.
Oh, no.
And so now he's man overboard situation here, and the ship is still carrying on. They're not going to be able to stop for people. So sometimes when this happened, and this was around, I think, the Cape Horn. So this wasn't in the U.S. This was out in some other ocean on the way to Australia. And he finds some driftwood that he's able to hold on to. And he wrote about in this article that his fear with the dangers he knew that lurked in the ocean, but not realizing there were dangers in the sky as well. And he ended up getting attacked by albatross, which is basically like very large seagulls. And they were pecking at him and coming at him, and he eventually was rescued by some natives in an island that he happened to be drifting towards. So they nurse him back to health, and he ends up on one of their boats looking for another ship that he could ride on to get to Australia. And this story was so compelling because once he finally got there, he goes to where he was supposed to be meeting these people and bumps into this guy that he worked with. And he acted like he saw a ghost. He thought for sure he was dead in the ocean. And here he is, living, walking. This is months later. It took him a while to recover from the infection he got. He was bedridden for a month.
Wow.
So several months must have passed, and he's just white as a ghost when he sees him. And he ends up confessing because he was confronted by this guy about what happened. And he confessed that he had actually cut the rope, knowing it was going to send him in the ocean.
Wow.
And so he was deeply apologetic. He's thinking, oh gosh, this guy's come back from the dead. I'm in trouble. So he confessed to it. And it took everything from this guy who survived out in the ocean not to kill him right then and there.
Yeah.
But he says in this story, later he saw him at a bar picking a fight with another American in Australia here. And he ended up getting roughed up because of it. So he got satisfaction out of himself watching him get into trouble. I don't know if he got arrested or not, but it was a really cool story. But the story was all about these big birds that were attacking him. And that's the only story in the Altoona Times in 1892. So, all of that to say, cool story about big birds. But it's a really good point to bring up because there could be lots of stories about people getting attacked by large birds like vultures or Altoona or all kinds of creatures that are out there that have a very large wingspan. And so with our fear and our recollection of these traumatic events and encounters with these animals, the story could have gotten embellished over time, and it turns into this 20-foot wingspan over time, just like that telephone game.
And maybe when they were pecking him to death, he started to become delusional and thought he saw 20-foot
the story
wingspan.
mentions how much blood he lost, and he was covered because they were pecking at him over time, and he's trying to fight him off with his pocket knife.
Oh, my gosh.
Cool story, though. Those are stories you don't see in newspapers anymore.
Exactly. We have another case, and I think this is our last case, actually, and it is the Illinois wave and the Marlon Lowe incident of 1977.
Now, this one kind of goes towards what I was just talking about, but carry on. So keep that in mind for this story.
Okay. So there was multiple witnesses for this, and the location was Lawndale and supposedly surrounding Illinois towns. There was a 10-year-old Marlon Lowe who reportedly was lifted by a large bird. The reported wingspan was 8 to 15 feet. Unlike the 1890 stories, though, this case has multiple modern witnesses. And I have heard about this story before, even prior to doing the research for this.
Yeah, it sounds like a little children's story book, though. There was something in a children's book.
Go in the woods because a big troll's going to eat you or something.
Or one of the tall tales to get kids to be scared.
Yeah.
But this is 1977, which is pretty modern, not that long ago, if you're me and you don't want to feel old.
So, yeah. And I'm wondering if there was any sort of newspaper or anything, like an article written on this. Now, the picture that I'll post on this for our Facebook and Instagram page is more so of a drawing. And you can see this huge bird picking up a little boy. But that does look more like a vulture.
So this is compelling because this case has witnesses. And when I search the newspapers, there are articles in almost every state on this particular story. So it's more modern, 1977. It did seem to be some kind of event that happened.
Did they not have anything better in all the other states to write about?
No, it's a small article in all these. But yes, a search of newspapers does reveal that this event seems to have occurred. Now, the story is described differently. One account of the situation is that he was dragged about 30 feet, not completely lifted. The mother, though, was there to witness it. She heard him screaming, and he was playing with his friends. And so the friends are witnesses as well. And they say that the bird had grabbed him by the tank top and lifted him about 2 feet off the ground. And if it weren't for him punching at the bird, the mother feels it probably would have just kept going and not let him go.
Wonder what this bird was thinking whenever it picked the boy up. Lunch? Dinner?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, birds are very afraid of humans. They don't really know what we are and if we're a threat, so they don't stick around to find out. So that says that this bird must have been in dire circumstances and needed food and was willing to take the risk.
Or just absolutely crazy, insane.
And so when the story got out, they had animal specialists, and this guy who studies condors was thinking potentially it could have been some type of condor. There's some migration in the area, and
those are supposed to be the largest birds
that we know
that are still in existence.
But he says there's no existing bird that would have been strong enough to pick up a 10-year-old boy.
Not even
off the
condor?
Ground. And here's the thing. In the fear and in the moment, it could have appeared that he was lifted 2 feet off the ground. But if you're wearing a tank top, your clothing can be stretched quite a bit.
That boy's going to need a lot of therapy.
Yes.
Or he did.
Even though this story got pretty popular, there's an article in the Arlington Heights Herald in Arlington Heights, Illinois. It has a picture of the boy, and we can share that with you if you want to see what he looks like. It's more of a shoulder and head shot. It wasn't a picture of the event. This is 1977. We don't have cameras in our pockets at all times.
I do have a rendition of the drawing, though.
Right.
The bird picking a boy up that I'll post.
So a few people in the central Illinois college town say they believe the article reads, few people in this central Illinois college town say they believe Ruth Lowe's tale about a giant bird lifting her son off the ground and dragging him across the backyard. But the soft-spoken middle-aged woman now has a shotgun stacked in the corner closet, and Kickapoo Creek, the local kids' favorite swimming and fishing spot, is deserted. So even the opening of the article is pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
Live on News 5. The crank calls have started. People are wanting to know if I still have my bottle, meaning her liquor bottle, because I did not exaggerate. I know what I saw, Mrs. Lowe said Thursday. Mrs. Lowe is still shaken from the Monday night incident in which a bird that looked like a monstrosity grabbed her son. And I'll tell you, a condor or a vulture is a pretty scary looking bird.
Oh, yeah.
But the article continues. The screams of her son Marlon, 10, and 2 playmates brought Mrs. Lowe, her husband Jake, and 2 neighbors rushing to the backyard just in time to see a large bird grab the strap of her son's tank top and shirt. Mrs. Lowe says the bird lifted Marion 2 feet off the ground, witnesses said, and carried him screaming and fighting 30 feet across the backyard.
Wow.
It scared me half to death, and it scared my husband, and he normally does not get scared, she says. Logan County officials are not publicly discounting the sighting because 4 adults made the report, but officials say there is no known bird capable of lifting a child. Again, that could have been the clothing was stretched to the point where it appeared that he was picked up, but his feet might have been dragging on the ground. But Thursday, most neighbors and residents in the village of 115 people, located 150 miles southwest of Chicago, were unwilling to talk about the incident. A few made wisecracks, and others said that they did not want to be bothered. While skeptics seem to be abound, Mrs. Lowe points to the desertion of the creek play area as evidence there is concern.
I bet after this occurred, more mothers or even fathers were keeping an eye on their kids, especially the little ones outside play.
That's not evidence that a bird almost took her son away. They hear a crazy story. They're not going to stick around and find out if it's real or not.
No, I'm just saying for those around, though, if it was me, I'd be on alert just in case, especially if it was a true story, supposedly.
And it was the number of witnesses that got people.
Right. And that's what would make it more compelling for me as well.
But here's the thing. They could have all been passing the bottle around.
Or mass hysteria.
Or something in the crop dusting out there, the chemicals in the air. You know, what happened at the witch trials. Everybody's a witch. I'm just saying. Nah. So, okay.
Well, do you believe this one or not?
No, but there's some possible explanation. Turkey vultures have a wingspan up to 6 feet. When seen up close, they appear enormous.
And that's what it looks like in the drawing, is a turkey vulture.
Yeah. There could be an escaped exotic bird. And now I could probably dig through the newspapers, but zoos and private collectors sometimes lose large birds. I don't know if they're going to publish that, to be honest. Condors are in zoos. So one could have gotten out. Maybe they kept it hush because they didn't want to get sued. I don't know.
Would condors even be considered an exotic bird?
That's all making an assumption anyway. So there's not really any documented evidence there. Child lift phenomenon, bird grabbing clothing does not equal sustained lift. A startled bird flapping could briefly raise the fabric beyond its true carrying capacity, like I was saying earlier. And physics matters. Even large condors struggle to lift more than a few pounds. There were no feathers recovered, there were no physical marks documented, and no photographs. Again, I'm going to give them some slack on the photograph thing. But cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman called it one of the strongest modern cases, but still no biological proof. So I don't know why that would be strong. Again, just because you have some witnesses doesn't mean there's some groupthink going on here.
Let me tell you what I think is a possibility, more so. I feel something did happen. And we know that a lot of folklore and a lot of things can come out of one fact even. But I think the boy was attacked by a bird.
True.
And a very large bird. And maybe you take a little bit of that scientific as far as flapping of the wings, pulling of the shirt, make it look like he came off the ground when he didn't. And I think the story was just exaggerated a little bit by witnesses. And who knows, maybe at the time that it happened, they were so scared and caught off guard by it that they just thought they saw things that weren't really there as far as the details. Was he attacked by a bird? Probably.
Was it a big, giant pterodactyl? No.
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean Thunderbird?
Thunderbird.
All in all, you've also got media that has really amplified some of these television programs like In Search Of and Monster Quest, Unsolved Mysteries, and Destination Truth.
That's a fun one.
And it raises the question of, is it true? Is this a true thing? But again, if there's something that's realistic, I agree with you on this point. There's got to be some sort of physical evidence. And you don't see that in any of these, except for the last case, but not really physical evidence, but more of those witness accounts.
Right. Psychology would call this narrative reinforcement, so that storytelling and it gets embellished over time. Cultural memory persistence, or even availability of heuristic thought. So this is, the more we see giant bird imagery, the more likely we're to interpret ambiguous sightings through that lens.
Yeah.
So again, we've covered similar topics like that before. People tend to recall similar experience themselves in seeing a large bird and assuming this goes along with that story.
And if we compare them, to be honest, I would say looking over all of that, and I know we've talked about it, but in the case of the Civil War one, digital hoax.
Absolutely.
All the way.
Mm-hmm.
Tombstone, I also think more of digital hoax, frontier sensationalism.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
1890s farmer photo. What do you think?
Modern fabrication.
Yeah, I agree. Pennsylvania, 1892.
Same thing. That size misperception, media influence, trying to get stories out there, for sure.
Agree. And then,
but although I wasn't able to find that article that supposedly was published.
Yeah, that's why we're saying most likely it didn't occur. And then Illinois, 1977.
Now, the event occurred, but I think it's been embellished. And people were afraid of birds at that time.
Oh, because the movie that came out.
There was the movie, The Birds,
Yeah, I forgot who.
But I think it was older than that.
The Birds, you think that movie was older?
The Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Birds.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I know it was on reruns because I saw it in the 80s as a child, and it traumatized me.
1963. It traumatized the crap out of me, too. I remember
everybody who saw that movie. So no wonder they're probably still afraid of dark, big birds that are flying around.
Yeah, I could see that. And I also think there was a lot of misidentification.
Exactly.
The type of bird that for this Illinois 1977 case.
Sure.
So overall, though, in conclusion, what would you say? The Thunderbird, real? Is he a sacred sky guardian? Being of thunder, lightning, and all things for cosmic balance?
The lore and the legend and the storytelling is fun, but this is not real.
Where's the physical evidence? I agree.
Birds are real.
Yes.
Big birds are real. But
Big Bird.
But Big Bird
Sesame
on
Street.
Sesame Street is a puppet.
Not real.
Sorry. Sorry.
And I loved Sesame Street growing up. Anyway, the Thunderbird still flies. Not just in the sky, but in everyone's imaginations.
And that's a great place for it to be.
Okay, so if you have seen a Thunderbird, write in and let us know about it. We would love to hear back from you.
Yes, because we want to make sure you're okay.
Kathy, have you seen a Thunderbird?
I've seen the Air Force Thunderbirds. It's a really cool air show.
I've seen Lake Thunderbird.
Lake Thunderbird in Oklahoma. That's a good one.
Oh, wait. I've also seen Thunderbird totem pose.
Oh, that's a good one. We love birds. I am a big bird fan. So
me too.
This is not hating on birds in this episode. So please, if you are a bird and you are offended, please write us in and we'll make things right.
This episode has been a lot of fun, but, I think
we got to get out of here.
That's a wrap.
And you can share your own parastories, topic suggestions, and comments to psychicandskeptic, all spelled out, @gmail.com. So you can find us wherever you enjoy your podcasts, and thank you for listening.
Because the paranormal is the normal.
Not yet understood.